Hello. Um, we'll start the program in few minutes, probably in 2 minutes. Please settle down, everyone. Um, may I request all the guests to please occupy the seats and please settle down. It's not a problem in 2 minutes. Okay. Um, request. May I request the media people who are on the stage to please leave the stage so that we can start our program later. Okay. Okay, let's start our program because it's already 3 o'clock. Um, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank everyone, especially our media friends and our respected and esteemed guests being here in this ninth Manila Forum. The theme of the program is GDI, GSI, and GCI. GDI stands for Global Development Initiative. GSI stands for Global Security Initiative, and GCI stands for Global Civilizational Initiative, and China's contribution to stabilizing an unstable world. Thank you so much. Without further ado, let's start. May I call on the new University we will request everyone to please stand up for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem to be led by the new University choir, GCash, and Milk Choral. Please remain standing for the singing of the People's Republic of China's national anthem. Thank you so much, New Era University Choir, Glee Club, and Male Chorale. May we request all our guests to please be seated. Okay. The next part of our program is our welcome remarks to be delivered by Dr. Alberto R. Domingo Jr., the New Era University President.
Our distinguished guest of honor, the Ambassador of the People's Republic of China to the Philippines, His Excellency Paul Zilian, the Honorable Benito de Chico, the Special Envoy of the Philippines to China, Professor Li King, Speaker and Vice President of Chinese Institute of International Studies, Professor Li Kai-sheng, Speaker and Vice President of the Chinese Institute of International Studies, and of course, Attorney Raul Lambina, sir, the APCO Chairman, Mr. Sixto Benedicto, the APCO President, and we also recognize Dr. Romel Benlawi, the Chairman of the Board of Advisors of the China Studies Center of this university, New Era University. We also acknowledge Dr. Carlos Tabunda, the Dean of the School of International Relations of the New Era University, the officers of the Manila Forum, and the officers of the Association for Philippines China Understanding or Act 2. Our friends from the various organizations, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to each and every one of you. I will ask this afternoon to deliver the welcome remarks in this historic and important event as we join the jubilation of the APCU in celebration of the almost 50th founding anniversary count February of 2024. And so on behalf of the University Administration, the faculty, staff, and the students, we wish the APCU multiple undertakings in order to realize your organization's objectives. It is our greatest privilege that the New Era University was chosen by the host of this important event, the Manila Forum, organized by the APCU, and which serves the term as what was stated in the manual a while ago. It is also The objective of this event is to conduct an informed discussion on how our two cultures of camaraderie and cooperation in the province. Our university community welcomes each of you to this main campus of New Era University. And as a player, not a institution of achieving excellence, discipline, and in service to humanity. Over the course of its existence, this university has catered to the educational needs of the Filipino youth, members and non-members of the church alike, primarily in the metro. College of Agriculture, the university, is located in Pinugay in Baras, Rizal. Currently, for the information of everyone, we have 18 colleges which offer bachelor degree programs and has the School of Graduate Studies, which is headed by our Vice President for Academic Affairs, who is also the Graduate School Dean, and I recognize Dr. Julian Jamandan. Good afternoon, sir. The education and business and also law and medicine. We also offer complete basic education catering to the more than 16,500 students which are the clientele of this higher institution of learning. We have also established, for the information of everyone, a number of learning centers that inform our people, particularly members of the New Era University community on issues concerning the ASEAN and Russia. And most recently, we opened the China Studies Center of the university last February 17 of this year, in which we have been invited as our guest of honor and speaker also, His Excellency Juan Zilian. Again, sir, it is our greatest pleasure to welcome you and your entrance again in this university. Palakpakan mo ang ating mahal na ambassador. And lastly, the value of this forum is deemed appropriate as the academics task to uphold the truth for future generations. Hence, this event may be of great help to balance our views and opinions against those that are considered fake news and misinformation about certain issues affecting our international relations. We amplify what our leaders have stated time and again, that the Philippines, including New Era University, should be friends to all and an enemy to none. We should look at current events with an objective and impartial view. Rather than be wary of our closest neighbor, let us try to understand the point of views of our fellow Easterners. Hence, the underlying objectives of this forum, which is also at explaining China's foreign policy to our countrymen. Presumably, all foreign policies, including that of China and other countries, are expected to always be anchored on these three global initiatives stated in the theme of this event, namely the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative, in order to foster peace and come up with a win-win cooperation. History attests that the Filipino and the Chinese peoples have lived in relative peace and understanding for over hundreds of years. We believe that this understanding lasts even to this day. We hope that the inputs and feedback from the 9th Manila Forum, initiated by the APCU, will lead us multiple steps towards reaching the end goal of mutual cooperation between the People's Republic of China and the Republic of the Philippines. Again, magandang hapon po sa lahat. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much. Ganxian Nimen.
Thank you very much for that very warm and enlightening welcome remarks, Dr. Alberto Domingo, the New Era University President. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, the next part of our program is a message that will be delivered or will be coming from His Excellency Ambassador Wang Xilian, Ambassador of China to the Philippines. Let's give him a round of applause.
Honorable Chairman Raul Lampino, President Sixto Benedicto, and board members of the APCU. Honorable Ambassador Benito Tashiko, Special Envoy of the President to China. Honorable President Dr. Alberto Domingo Jr. of the New Era University, and Dr. Carlos Tabuda, Dean, School of International Relations, and Dr. Romel Banloy, Chairman of the Board of Advisors of China Studies Center of New York University. Thank you for hosting this event. It's so great to be back here after a few months. Vice President Dr. Professor Dr. Liu Qing of China Institute of International Studies, and Vice President Dr. Li Kaisheng of Shanghai Institute of International Studies, fellow scholars and friends. Good afternoon. I take a great pleasure in welcoming you all to this event, the 9th Manila Forum on China-Philippines relations, against the backdrop of increasing instability and uncertainty in the international landscape. It is timely for this forum to host a discussion on Xi Jinping's thoughts on diplomacy and China's foreign policy under the theme of the GDI, GSI, GCI, China's contribution to stabilizing and stagnation and upheaval. Changes unseen in a century are unfolding at a faster pace, and human society faces unprecedented challenges. Unity or split, peace or conflict, cooperation or confrontation. These are the questions raised by the times. Facing profound changes, President Xi Jinping put forth the vision of building a community with a shared future for the mankind. Providing guidance for China's diplomacy. Over the past 10 years, such a concept has been translated into action and the vision into reality. On this basis, President Xi has again successfully put forward the three major initiatives of Global Development Initiative, Global Security Initiative, and Global Civilization Initiative as Chinese solutions to addressing the deficits in global development, peace, trust, and governance, providing support to building a community with a shared future for the mankind, and injecting impetus into global peace and development. What do these three major initiatives imply for the region at large and the Philippines in particular? Implementing the first is implementing GSI to solve human security dilemmas. The GSI emphasizes that humanity is an indivisible security community, and its essence can be summarized as 6 commitments, namely commitment to the vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security, to sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries, to the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter, to accommodating the legitimate security concerns of all countries, to peaceful resolution of differences and disputes between countries through a dialogue and consultation, and to maintaining security in both traditional and non-traditional domains. The only right path in a chaotic world is to jointly safeguard the international system with the UN at its core and the international order based on international law. Instead of upholding Cold War mentality or engaging in bloc confrontation, geopolitical coteries, or military alliances for selfish interest. Currently, there are 2 trends in the Asia-Pacific region. One is to strengthen solidarity and cooperation and promote regional economic integration. And the other is to incite division and confrontation in an attempt to revive the Cold War mentality. China and the Philippines, as important countries in this region, should follow the trend of the times, maintain strategic autonomy, explore a path tailored to security interests in Asia and in the fundamental and long-term interests of both countries and people of the region at large, and jointly safeguard the regional peace dividend. Second, practicing GDI to jointly build a global development community. China and the Philippines are close neighbors whose futures are deeply rooted in our national construction and development respectively, in a friendly neighborhood and in a greater Asian family of peace, for peace, stability, and win-win cooperation. The core ideas of the GDI include high priority to the people and development, multilateralism, and the spirit of open and inclusive partnership. So are the common aspirations of the peoples of China and the Philippines. China is willing to forge synergy between our development plans so that our ties can be enhanced through common development, a quality delivery of assets, and deeper cooperation between ASEAN +3, ASEAN +1. And we believe such is the way to benefit the people of all countries in this region. Third, carrying forward the GCI to promote dialogue and integration of civilizations. People-to-people exchanges are essential to better mutual understanding and stronger foundation of friendship. This, however, does not happen overnight and requires mutual goodwill. As President Xi and President Marcos have agreed to prioritize the people-to-people exchanges in bilateral relations, it is time for us to work closely and relentlessly to deepen our millennium-long traditional friendship in line with the aspirations of the people and the trend of the time. The concept of building a community with a shared future for mankind and the three global initiatives are fundamentally different from traditional Western theorem on international relations. It shows that China will never follow the path of hegemony and power politics, protecting one's own security at the expenses of the security of others, provoking separatism and confrontation, or China will never follow the path of hegemony and power politics, protecting one's own security at the expenses of the security of others. Instead, China will always be a builder of world peace, a contributor to global development, and a defender of the international order. As the Filipino proverb goes, united we stand and divided we fall. I look forward to your constructive discussions, inspiration from historical experiences and lessons for the steady and long-term development of China-Philippine relations. I wish to conclude this forum a complete success. Thank you, and mabuhay.
Thank you so much, His Excellency Ambassador Wang Silian. Sir, please remain on stage. We would want to allow one friend from our media friend to ask you one question. May I call on a representative from the media? I think it's Tristan from CNN. Tristan?
Hi, good afternoon, Ambassador Wang. Tristan from CNN. Well, Ambassador, you've already laid down China's foreign policy and its stress the importance of neighborhood diplomacy. But this weekend, sir, countries like the United States, Japan, and South Korea issued a statement on the South China Sea issue. But the Chinese Foreign Ministry also reaffirmed its position on that. So given the number of countries who are talking about the South China Sea situation, how does China view this, and how countries like the Philippines and China work together to move forward past these issues? Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. It seems without...
Thank you, Tristan.
Yeah, without answering one question, you wouldn't let me go. So first of all, I would like to refer you to the official statement of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China, the Ministry of Defense of China. And having said this, I want to emphasize that China and the Philippines have differences on the maritime issues, including the Rengaijiao, or what is called the Second Thomas Shoal Reef. So we should faithfully implement the important consensus reached between our two presidents during his visit to China, and to manage the relevant issues well. The Chinese side has repeatedly express our willingness to properly handle existing differences with the Philippines through bilateral dialogue and consultation. So we hope that the Philippine side will work with the Chinese side in the same direction, so that to strengthen the dialogue and consultation over maritime disputes, to seek effective ways to manage the maritime situation as soon as possible. And by the way, we welcome the appointment of the former Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Teddy Lorting, as the special envoy of the President to China. And we look forward to him continuously playing a positive role in managing the differences and boosting the bilateral ties. And we are hoping that our two sides will also make full use of all existing maritime mechanisms to handle the maritime disputes in a timely manner. And actually, starting from today, there is a consultation on the code of conduct in the South China Sea by the working groups of China and 10 ASEAN countries, which is being hosted in Manila. And we are happy to see that the Philippines is hosting this very important meeting, and China is ready to work with ASEAN countries to accelerate the negotiation on a code of conduct at an early date. And we hope that we can strive to reach the regional norm that it is effective, substantive, and in line with international law, including the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And China believes that China and ASEAN countries, we are capable and wise enough to maintain peace and stability in the South China Sea and build their common home. And you mentioned the name of few countries. So I would like to also take this opportunity to remind everyone, to draw your attention that the United States and some other forces wish nothing but chaos in the South China Sea and keep stirring up trouble in this sea area. Recently, the United States fanned up the flames over the Renai Reef, or the second Thomas Reef dispute, provoked discord and incited confrontation between China and the Philippines, and disrupted the peace and tranquility in the South China Sea to serve the United States' own geopolitical interest and strategy. So China hopes that regional countries will maintain necessary vigilance against such evil clause behind the scenes and hold the initiative of maintaining peace and stability in the South China Sea in their own hands. Thank you.
Thank you so much, His Excellency Ambassador Wang Silian, for that very inspiring and enlightening message. Thank you as well, sir, for answering the question. Thank you very much. By the way, just for the information of everyone, we will have a media open forum later after all the speakers have delivered their presentation. But for now, let's proceed to the next part of our program. Please settle down, ladies and gentlemen. We're still continuing. The next part of our program is a keynote speech to be delivered by APCO Chairman, Attorney Raul Lambino. Sir?
First, I would like to thank His Excellency Ka Eduardo Manalo, the leader of this very big religious group in the country, and the officials of New Era University, led by Dr. Alberto Domingo, for allowing us to hold the 9th Manila Forum, organized by the Association for Philippines-China Understanding and the Chinese Embassy. Thank you so much for your generosity. His Excellency Ambassador Huang Xilian, His Excellency, my good friend, Ambassador Benito Chico, Special Envoy of the President to China, President Sixto Benedicto, and the other officers of APCO, the other officials of the Chinese Embassy who are present here today, the fellow keynote speakers led by Professor Liu King and Professor Li Ka-shing, Dr. Romel Banlawi, my province mate and a good friend. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I spent the last weekend in a state of restlessness after reading the news from the Kyodo News Service deadline, Manila and Tokyo, and so you can search this in your internet. Citing undisclosed sources, the report said Japan, the United States, and Australia are considering sending their vessels carrying aircraft to the Philippines to conduct a trilateral naval drill next week in the South China Sea, and that the planned exercise would be set for Wednesday, that is tomorrow. The Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force has decided to send its largest destroyer, the Izumo. The Royal Australian Navy will deploy its amphibious assault ship Canberra, while the United States Navy is expected to send its amphibious assault ship America. All told, the purpose of the joint exercise, including aircraft takeoff and landing practices using the decks of the three ships, is to show the commitment of the United States and its security allies to upholding, quote-unquote, freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. The participation of Philippine forces in the joint drill has been canceled, according to the report, because the three nations' aircraft are too large to land on the decks of Philippine warships. Izumo is expected to pay a port call to Philippines port, I think, this coming Friday. The timing of this development lends suspicion to its real intent. It comes just over 2 weeks since 6 China Coast Guard vessels, 12 Chinese maritime militia vessels, and 3 People's Liberation Army Navy vessels disrupted the Philippine Coast Guard's delivery of supplies to the Philippine military contingent on board the BRP Sierra Madre on Ayungin Shoal, or the Second Thomas Shoal. Sierra Madre is the World War II vessel grounded in Ayungin since 1999 and occupied by less than a dozen Philippine Marines with a mission to assert symbolic Philippine sovereignty over the atoll. Ayungin itself lies within the Philippines' 200-mile exclusive economic zone under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. It is 194 kilometers west of the Philippine island of Palawan. Apart from China, the atoll is also claimed by Taiwan and Vietnam. The August 5 episode was similar to other incidents in the past few years. What is different this time is the response. We have not heard of the United States or Australia or Japan responding to previous incidents in this part of South China Sea. The conduct of a joint maritime drill by the US, Japan, and Australia this time around, coming after the Philippines joined them in their first ever defense ministerial meeting in June last year, or this year in Singapore, would represent a marked escalation of the problem. I'd like to believe that Filipinos, and for that matter, the Chinese people too, don't want an escalation of the problem. I submit that while the water cannon incidents and actions of similar disruptive nature taken by the Chinese should be regarded rightly as serious, they don't, however, comprise the total universe of Philippine-China relations. To begin with, the legal status of Ayungin Shoal is vague under international law. As one expert has said, and I quote, while the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague ruled in July 2016 that China's claim to most of the South China Sea by virtue of its so-called nine-dash line had no legal basis, it did not rule that Ayungin Shoal was part of Philippine national territory either, unquote. Well, I will not bore you with a needless recitation of the issue. The more consequential issue now is how the evolving defense and security alliances in the region, amid increasing freedom of navigation concerns in the South China Sea, will impact on the Philippines exercising an autonomous, self-determining foreign policy. I believe we need not be so helplessly caught up in these big power maneuvers that we tend to forget that Philippine ties with China are historically as deep as they are closely intertwined, and that today our relations can be said to rest, among others, on the principle of being a good neighbor and a friend. While the aims of the big nation alliances are clear to us, their existence in fact enhances all the more the need for Filipinos to continue building independently our relations with China under whatever circumstances we find ourselves in. By this, I mean a continuing dialogue with China is essential, but one that is elevated to ministerial level with a jointly stated purpose of forging a path forward by two peace-loving neighbors, some sort of a modus vivendi in order to avoid heightening and enlarging the conflict. Some have argued impatiently that previous dialogues had not yielded results that are to our distinct advantage, but had been exploited by China to do as it pleases. I believe that is the myopic view, and this becomes clear to us when we ask the question ourselves, what is the alternative to dialogue? The answer is devastating and simple. The alternative, in plain language, does not exist. Always, the path forward, whatever the difficulties, is through dialogue. When President Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr. made a state visit to China in January this year at the invitation of President Xi Jinping, both leaders declared in a joint statement that the visit is an expression of the sincerity and friendship of President Marcos towards China and the Chinese people, as well as his strong confidence in the future development of China-Philippine relations at the auspicious start of the new year. His strong confidence, quote unquote, in the future of our relations has never been as noteworthy a phrase as it is today. During the visit, both leaders held a friendly and productive bilateral meeting. They recalled the development of China-Philippines relations, rooted in history and marked by high-level exchanges and enriched by strong economic and people-to-people ties. Crucially important is the fact that they agreed, and I quote, to further strengthen the China-Philippines relationship of comprehensive strategic cooperation under the new circumstances as close neighbors, kin and partners that help and understand each other towards win-win results through mutually beneficial cooperation so as to bring the bilateral relations to new heights, unquote. They made commitments to conduct cooperation in the 4 key priority areas of agriculture, infrastructure, energy, and people-to-people exchanges, and to pursue additional avenues of cooperation in the areas of defense and security, science and technology, trade, and investments. And notably, the two leaders, quote, reaffirmed the principles contained in the 1975 China-Philippines Joint Communique and other documents, whose principles include, among others, the peaceful settlement of all disputes, mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, and non-interference in each other's internal affairs. The Philippines reaffirmed its adherence to the One China policy, unquote. The references to the 1975 Joint Communique principles stand out now as both nations grapple with the new demands of diplomacy and their circumstances heightened by rising security tensions in the South China Sea, and equally by President Marcos' recent decision allowing American forces the use of 9 Philippine military bases under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. According to news reports during his state visit to China, President Marcos and President Xi agreed to complement the bilateral consultation mechanism on the South China Sea by convening annual defense security talks and establishing direct communication between their foreign affairs establishments. President Marcos also agreed to establish more lines of communication with China following misinterpreted statements from the Chinese ambassador to the Philippines about stoking the fire of the Taiwan Strait issue. The avenue to smooth out the kinks would be a high-level ministerial dialogue, something that even the United States initiated in June when U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made a rare visit to Beijing for talks aimed at stabilizing American-China relations. A Beijing-Manila defense and security dialogue as a mechanism to work out a peaceful settlement of all disputes, as contained in the 1975 China-Philippines Joint Communique, would be mutually activated at this time by both sides instead of trading barbed rhetoric over the unsettled territorial dispute. The dialogue dovetails with President Xi Jinping's latest Global Civilization Initiative he unveiled in March, which was preceded by his Global Development Initiative and Global Security Initiative. These initiatives not only reflect China's evolving understanding of its own path to modernization, but also represents a resolute commitment to fostering a shared future for all humanity. Under China's Global Civilization Initiative, President Xi has put forward core ideas of joint advocacy in 4 aspects. The first is respect for the diversity of civilizations. President Xi believes that countries, unquote, need to uphold the principles of equality, mutual learning, dialogue, and inclusiveness among civilizations, and let cultural exchanges transcend estrangement, mutual learning transcend classes, and coexistence transcend feelings of superiority. The second is to jointly advocate the common values of humanity. China believes that, quote, peace, development, equity, justice, democracy, and freedom are the common aspirations of all peoples. Countries need to keep an open mind in appreciating the perception of values by different civilizations and refrain from imposing their own values of models on others and from stoking ideological confrontation. The third is to jointly advocate the importance of inheritance and innovation of civilizations. Countries, in China's view, quote, need to fully harness the relevance of their histories and cultures to the present times and push for creative transformation and innovative development of their fine traditional cultures, unquote. And the fourth is to jointly advocate robust international people-to-people exchanges and cooperation. Countries need to explore the building of a global network for inter-civilization dialogue and cooperation, enrich the contents of exchanges, and expand avenues of cooperation to promote mutual understanding and friendship among people of all countries and jointly advance the progress of human civilizations. Topping the core concept of President Xi Jinping's Global Security Initiative, which he unveiled in 2014, are two intertwined principles that augurs the success of a dialogue. One is to stay committed to the vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security. Among other things, its essence is a commitment to cooperation, bringing about security through political dialogue and peaceful negotiation, and pursuit of sustainable security, resolving conflicts through development and eliminating the breeding ground for insecurity. Another is to stay committed to respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries. It thus stresses, quote, sovereign equality and non-interference in internal affairs, which are basic principles of international law and the most fundamental norms governing contemporary international relations, unquote. As for global development, President Xi Jinping set forth the Global Development Initiative during the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Development, as we all know, holds the key to counter the economic disruption caused by pandemic and other economic challenges that a transforming world now faces. This initiative centered on people calls for accelerating the implementation of the 23 Sustainable Development Goals for a more robust, equitable, and sustainable global development. Rooted in practical cooperation and the spirit of open partnership, the Global Development Initiative has drawn nearly 70 countries into its fold, including the Philippines. And during the January visit of President Marcos, the Philippines was welcomed in the group of friends to be part of the Global Development Initiative, as is stated in the joint statement between the Philippines and the Chinese government during that visit. Together as a community of nations, we should strive to combat global poverty, ensure food security, foster sustainable development, and strengthen connectivity. May I remind you, my dear friends, most of the foods that we are now importing into the Philippines come from China. I will not go into further details. Suffice it to say that these three initiatives, which focus respectively on development, security, and civilization, are in the view of China not only a highly condensed vision of China's deepening understanding of its own modernization path, but also a step-by-step expansion of the paths to cooperation. I'm sure our two keynote speakers will later on expound more about GDI, GSI, and GCI. Finally, taking into account these major initiatives by its big neighbor and driven by its own need for defense cooperation and economic security, the Philippines has the choice to make in this difficult time. One is whether to put increasing reliance on the emerging big nation security alliances and thus make an unstable region even more unpredictable in the future. The other is whether to work its way independently in dealings with China and the West through the challenges of sovereignty issues as well as constraints occasioned by its treaty obligations with the United States. And lastly, before I end my speech, I would like to pronounce, I am a Filipino and I love the Philippines. Thank you. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Thank you so much, APCO Chairman Attorney Raul Lambino, for that very enlightening and very inspiring keynote speech. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to the keynote speeches of our two more speakers coming from China, academics coming from China, and our panelist, Dr. Romel Banlawe, then we will have the second part of the program, which is an open forum. Let's take a short break. Let's have a tea break. But while we're doing the tea break, we're enjoying the refreshment like tea, coffee, and other refreshments. We will be entertained by an intermission number to be given to us by the New Era University Choir, Glee Club, and Male Chorale. This is only 10 to 15 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome and give a round of applause to the New Era University Choir, Glee Club, and Male Chorale. You can please enjoy the refreshment at the back. Coffee, tea, nuts, biscuits, and all. Thank you. Please give them a round of applause.
I know our dreams will never die. Dreams see us through to forever.
Thank you so much, New Era University Choir, Glee Club, and Male Chorale for that wonderful intermission number. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to request everyone, our media friends, our guests, to please settle down. We will proceed with the next part of our program. And the second part of our forum today is an open discussion. No? We will have time for question and answers. So, yes, please settle down, media friends, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's proceed. The next part of our program is another keynote speech to be delivered by the Vice President and Senior Research Fellow of the Chinese Institute of International Studies, or CIIS, no other than Professor Liu Qing. Sir, please proceed. Please, the PowerPoint presentation of Professor Liu Qing, make it ready. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Sir, yes.
Your Excellency Ambassador Benito Techo, Excellency Chinese Ambassador Basilian, dear University President Albert Domingo, dear APCU Chairman Arturo Lamindo, and President Cito Benedicto, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Many thanks for invitation, which makes me have a great opportunity to share views with you on my understanding of the three global initiatives and their significance to the development of our bilateral relations. Firstly, let me briefly introduce three global initiatives. The three initiatives have charted the way forward for human society from three dimensions of development, security, and civilization. They become the three pillars of the building of a community with shared future for mankind. They complement each other. GDI has clearly answered the questions of development. What kind of development concept does mankind need, and how to achieve global development? GSI has clearly answered the question of security. What kind of security concept that mankind need, and how to achieve universal security? Next slide. GCI has clearly answered the historical perplexity. What kind of civilization concept mankind needs, and how to realize exchanges and mutual respect? GDI, GSI, and GCI respectively provide the foundation of material security and civilization for promoting the building of a community with a shared future for mankind. Next slide. GDI focuses on the issue of global development. Today's world is beset with great challenges and uncertainties, raising concerns about whether we could achieve UN 2030 SDGs. In 2021, President Xi proposed a GDI at UN General Assembly, calling for working together to steer global development towards a new stage of balanced, coordinated, and inclusive growth. The initiative mainly includes 6 principles: staying committed to development as priority, a people-centered approach, benefits for all, innovation-driven development, harmony between man and nature, results-oriented actions. Next slide. Up to now, GDI has received support from more than 100 countries, UN and other international and regional organizations, and nearly 70 countries have become members of the group of Friends of GDI, including all ASEAN members. GDI has been written into cooperation documents between China and ASEAN, Central Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Pacific Island countries. GDI focuses on 8 key areas and has implemented more than 200 early harvest projects through bilateral and multilateral channels, using great assistance, concessional loans, and the Global Development and the South-South Cooperation Fund, benefiting more than 6 developing countries. China has opened the fund to all UN agencies, countries, and NGOs to better mobilize resources from all parts. Next slide. GSI focuses on security issues. Global security issues have been particularly acute in recent years. Traditional and non-traditional security threats are intertwined. The deficits in peace, development, security, and governance are growing. And the world is once again at a crossroad in history. At the critical moment, President Xi put forward GCI at the opening ceremony of the Boao Forum for Asia in 2022. GSI champions the commitment in 6 areas: staying committed to vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security, respecting the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of all countries, abiding by the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, taking the legitimate security concerns of all countries seriously, peacefully resolving differences and disputes between countries through dialogue and consultation, maintaining security in both traditional and non-traditional domains. Next slide. At present, China is the only one among the 5 nuclear weapon states that has committed itself to non-forced use of nuclear weapons. China is the only nuclear power that has expressly its willingness to sign the protocol of the Southeast Asia Nuclear Weapon Free Zone Treaty. China is the 2nd largest contributor to UN peacekeeping operations and the largest troop contributor among the permanent members of the UN Security Council. China has actively engaged in mediation diplomacy to promote the political settlement of relevant hot issues. China has sent a special envoy on Eurasia affairs and had in-depth communication with related parties on the political settlement of the Ukraine crisis. China has facilitated the signing of a reconciliation agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, helping them restore diplomatic relations. Next slide. GCI focuses on harmonious coexistence between civilizations. In recent years, with intensification of geopolitical conflicts, the theory of clash of civilizations and superiority of civilizations has returned to the public's attention, aggravating the hatred and estrangement between different civilizations and seriously hindering international exchange and cooperation. At such a moment, people cannot help but ask, where is the world civilization going? President Xi put forward the GCI at CPC in dialogue with world political parties, high-level meeting this year, calling on in-depth exchanges and a dialogue to advance human civilizations through inclusiveness and mutual learning. The GSI proposed 4 advocations, including respect for the diversity of civilizations, the common values of humanity, of peace, development, equity, justice, democracy, and freedom, the importance of inheritance and innovation of civilizations, robust international people-to-people exchanges, and cooperation. Next slide. China has been working with other parties to implement UN Global Agenda for Dialogue Among Civilizations. To give example, China, together with the Philippines, Australia, and Japan, initiated the Boao Forum for Asia in 2001. Since 2015, a special sub-forum on religion has been set up to provide a platform for the dialogue among the representatives from different religions in the world. China proposed the establishment of a conference on dialogue among Asian civilizations to promote dialogue and exchanges among civilizations. Now, let's think about the significance of the 3 great initiatives for China-Philippines relations. Next slide. From the perspective of GDI, I'd like to emphasize the key words of common development and a common prosperity. I share 4 points with you. Next slide. Firstly, both sides put development high on bilateral agenda, especially in trade and investment. Since China and Philippines established diplomatic ties 47 years ago, our practical cooperation has yielded fruitful results. Bilateral trade has increased by 1,200 times, from $72 million in 1975 to 88 billion in 2022. China has been the Philippines' largest trading partner, largest source of imports, and the 2nd largest export market for 6 years. In recent years, China has become the main source of the foreign investment in Philippines. Look forward, both China and the Philippines will be fast-growing economies. They have become important engines to the development of the region economy. We will have great potential for cooperation to promote common prosperity. Secondly, economic development on both sides is people-centered. I will share 2 stories with you. One is about construction of infrastructure. The other is poverty reduction. Infrastructure is public good. There is a saying in China, if you want to be rich, build rose first. When I studied in the university in Beijing, more than 1,600 kilometers away from my hometown 30 years ago, it took me 2 days to back home by regular train. Right now, it only takes me 6 hours by high-speed train. If someone asks me why my life has changed dramatically just over 30 years, I would say it is construction of transportation facilities. Thanks for the development highway network, high-speed rail network, airports and seaports, China could develop so rapidly and has become the second largest economy in the world. BRI is an international public goods which prioritize the development of infrastructure to improve people's well-being as fast as possible. There have been many cases of BRI cooperation between China and ASEAN, including Jakarta-Bandung high-speed railway. BRI has coordinated well with the Philippines Build program, such as Estrella Pendleton Bridge in Manila. During President Mark's visit to China this year, both sides signed a number of cooperation projects, which we believe will bear more fruits in the future. Next slide. The other story is about poverty reduction. Over the past 40 years, China has completely eliminated extreme poverty, lifted over 800 million people out of poverty, and brought over 400 million people into the middle income group. Agricultural technology has played a great role on poverty reduction. Yuan Nongping, known as the father of hydro rice in the world, contribute a lot in this regard. He is my country fellow from Hunan province. This scientist loved Philippines so much. He visited Philippines about 40 times. In 1999, he decided to take the Philippines as the first stop to realize the dream of hybrid rice going abroad and going the world. Under his support, the Philippine Center for Agricultural Technology was established. This center was benefited more than 300,000 Filipino farmers and raised the grain yield by 4.8 billion kilograms. Thirdly, bilateral cooperation benefits for regional countries. The strong momentum of China-Philippines economy and trade cooperation lies in the fact that the two economies are highly complementary and highly attractive markets for each other. Their cooperation is not limited at the bilateral level, but has been integrated into the regional economy and trade architecture, such as RCEP. Last not least, innovation could inject new impetus into the development of both sides. After years of exploration and practice, China has embarked on the path of green development through scientific and technology innovation. To take new energy industry as an example, today the production scale of clean energy equipment, such as wind power and solar power, ranks first in the world. In 2022, China's new energy vehicles contributed, growing first, maintaining the first in the world for 8 years. Green innovation is changing the mode of production, way of life, way of thinking, and values. There is a great potential for our two countries to cooperate. To give example, Philippines has abundant offshore wind energy resources. Chinese wind power enterprises could participate in the pre-development of offshore wind power in Philippines. In the future, they could establish joint ventures to participate in planning of wind farmers' industry bases, operational sites, and anti-typhoon design, etc. Next slide. From the perspective of GSI, I'd like to highlight common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security. Two aspects. The first is staying committed to the vision of a common and cooperative security. China and the Philippines are neighbors that could not move away from each other. For 1,000 years, our people have lived in friendship without historical grudge. The long history of friendly exchange between China and the Philippines shows China is a message of peace. The history also proved that the security of our two people was linked closely. They supported each other when they faced the foreign invasion. We are in the same boat of regional security. The security should not be a zero-sum game. It should involve all states. If a bloc emphasizes its member security and neglects other countries' security, it will apparently divide a region into different security pieces and make the region unstable. Therefore, regional countries should achieve common security through the establishment of regional security mechanisms. Regional security cooperation should be carried out on the basis of the mutual trust to replace the Cold War mentality based on the balance of power. The cooperative security should emphasize inclusiveness rather than exclusiveness, multilateralism rather than small groups, consultations rather than confrontations. The second aspect is adhering to comprehensive and sustainable security. Security issues including traditional and non-traditional security. To resolve the disputes in South China Sea, we will maintain close communication at all levels through bilateral mechanisms. In the meantime, we could build mutual trust through the cooperation on non-traditional security issues and create favorable conditions for the settlement of the sensitive disputes. There are a series of non-traditional security threats such as transnational crimes, environmental problems, poverty and social inequality, food and energy shortage, etc. In response to these threats, we need to work together to take appropriate measures, such as strengthening healthcare, combating climate change, promoting social equity and stability. In short, there are so many problems waiting for us to deal with. We should jointly safeguard our common security. Next slide. From the perspective of GCI, I like to stress close exchange and mutual learning. Historically, China and the Philippines enjoy close people-to-people and cultural exchanges. 1,000 years ago, the people of our two countries were closely linked by sea and worked together with diligence, courage, and wisdom to open up the maritime Silk Road. There are so many stories about affectionate people-to-people exchanges between the two countries, such as King King Sulu visited in China in Ming Dynasty. Right now, his descendants live in Dezhou, southern provinces, and have been reproducing for 20 generations. Secondly, the joint fight against epidemic has witnessed the people's sincerity between the two countries in hard times. The joint fight against the COVID-19 has been the biggest highlight of China-Philippine relations over 3 years. When the epidemic broke out in China in early 2020, the Philippines was firstly extended hand to China. Since the outbreak of epidemic in Philippines, China has offered various forms of aid and supplies to help Philippines. Chinese vaccines have become the main part of the vaccination in Philippines. Thirdly, I think tourism cooperation is a highlight of people-to-people exchange. Next slide. Philippines is rich in tourism resources, and it is becoming one of the popular countries for Chinese tourists to travel. China has been the second largest source of tourists to Philippines for many years. During President Marcos' visit to China early this year, China and the Philippines issued a joint statement welcoming the signing of the implementation plan of MOU on tourism cooperation and pledging to restore the number of tourists and direct flights between the cities of the two countries, especially the capitals, to the pre-academic level. Right now, there are more than 100 flights travel to two countries every week. I think we still have potential to increase more flights by further strengthening subnational cooperation and promoting friendly exchanges between sister provinces, cities of the two countries. Last but not least, we should encourage more people-to-people exchange. Frankly saying, there is still a lack of people-to-people and cultural exchanges between our two countries, especially between universities and think tanks. I have been studying China-ASEAN relations for more than a decade and met some Filipino scholars. But this is my first time visit Philippines. When I work in Beijing, CIIS, I seldom see Filipino scholars, journalists, and congressmen. In my opinion, we are far from knowing each other. We need to enter each other's society and under each other. We need to encourage more bilateral exchange and cooperation in science, education, culture, art, media, think tanks, youth, and other fields. To conclude, our two countries' interests are deeply integrated. China and the Philippines are a community with a shared future. History has proved and will continue to prove that a sound, stable, and friendly China-Philippines relations serve the fundamental interests of our two countries. As always, the two countries should enhance mutual trust, manage differences, and advance cooperation. The China-Philippine Manila Forum is a bridge linking the friendship between the two countries, which is collecting talents from the two countries to contribute wisdoms to the development of our bilateral relations. Let's work together, implement the spirit of the 3 global initiatives, maintain our common interests, jointly keep regional stability and development, and promote building of a closer China-ASEAN community with and shared future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Liu Qing, Vice President of the Chinese Institute of International Studies. Thank you, sir. Okay. His presentation was actually educational and very informative. So again, a round of applause for Professor Liu Qing. Okay, without further ado, let's move to the next part of our program. Another keynote speech from our guest, come from China, Professor Li Kai-sheng, Vice President, Shanghai Institute for International Studies. Sir, you take the floor. A round of applause, please.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm so happy to come back to the Philippines. I visited the Philippines. My first visit to the Philippines was in 2015. After that, I visited this very beautiful country a few times again. For me, I think every trip to the Philippines is always level and exciting, and there is always something new to be discovered. I'm not actually, be frankly, I'm not a Philippines expert. I'm not an expert on the Philippines. My major is about East Asia security. But I think the Philippines is a very special, very important country to China. So I try to understand more about this special label. Actually, a few years ago, I published a book in China, in Chinese. Just this book. Of course, I think this is not a propaganda of my book, because in Chinese, I think it doesn't be sell. I would not sell it in the Philippines. But anyway, I just want to show my main goal, and I think this is my main mission, to help more Chinese people to understand better and more the Philippines. So I think actually I think there are so many Chinese scholars, they share the same mission with the APCU. We have the same mission. That is to try to help our fellow citizens to understand better another important country. So I think this is why I'm here this time. Actually, this mission to help the fellow citizens to understand for the Philippines to understand better China, for China to understand better the Philippines. I think this is very serious, very critical, very important mission. Everyone, of course, everyone knows now our two countries are facing some difficulties, especially in the issue of the South China Sea. But of course, these challenges are so difficult and very, very hard to be resolved. But in my mind, these challenges, for example, in the South China Sea, they are very specific, and it's just a very small part of our bilateral relations. Our bilateral relations is so comprehensive. Actually, in my mind, the real challenge for our bilateral relations, the real challenge is I think that has always been overlooked. The real challenge is that we cannot understand each other very well, even we are so close. Of course, I don't mean you. I think all of you are China experts. You know China very well. I mean, politicians, businessmen, maybe media. Of course, I remember there is a reporter from CNN, yeah? not including you, of course, not including you. I think just a lot of all of these people, just some of these people. But actually, generally, I don't think, be frankly, I don't think there is a real understanding about China in the Philippines. So I'm wondering, when these people, especially the politicians, when they make the China-related decisions, do they know really China's culture, China's history, Chinese foreign policy? Actually, I have some doubt. Of course, be frankly, China is not so easy to be understood. You know, very long history, 5,000 years, and a little complicated language, Chinese, Mandarin. But actually, maybe not so hard. Just now, and you heard, maybe everyone heard Chinese songs from Filipino girls. So I think maybe not so hard. Of course, China, you know, and for the Philippines, it is a very different country, culturally, historically, even in the political systems. So I think, be frankly, not so easy to be understood, to be understand for the Philippines. And even for China, you have the Philippines has different religion, different culture, Catholics and so on. So not so easy for Chinese people too. But I think this mission is so important. We should do our best to do something. So here, I try to explain something about China. Of course, just for your reference in your studies. And especially, I think for the current our bilateral relations, there are three things. I think they are very, very important. They should be understood very well. The first one is about China's national character. China's national character. China is a socialist country. We have a different political system, but China doesn't like expanding its ideology. This is so important. This is so important because the West is always saying China want to, you know, construct a new world order based on maybe different values. Yes, we are different. We have different values. We are socialist. China is a socialist country, but very important thing. China's tradition is not to expand its values, its ideologies, I think to tell others, you should do something, you should do these things, you should do other things. To preach, this is a Western tradition, not the Chinese tradition, So this is very different. So I think for China, even we have different culture, we have different values, no problem. We could coexist peacefully. So I think this is actually, I think this is one of ideas in global civilization initiative. Professor Liu, and actually, I think he has said so much about that. So about this, I stop here. Another character of China, I think, is that China is a bigger country, has been a bigger country, but with no tradition of expansion, Traditionally, actually, you know, China society was an agricultural society. What it means? I think agricultural society tends to be self-sufficient. So for traditional China, no incentive to expand. Of course, currently China is an industrial society, but now it is not necessary to expand like what the Western countries did in the modern history. because the key of the current power competition is industry, technology, even ideas, not territory. So China, I think, no tradition of expanding. So this is the first thing about China's national characters. The second thing is about China's worldview. How do you see the world from a Chinese perspective? I think so very, very important to understand China. President Xi Jinping suggested some important ideas in foreign affairs, such as a community with shared future for humankind, global security initiative, global development initiative, and global civilization, and so on. Actually, Dr. Liu and Chairman Irambino said so much about this. I just want to address a question. Maybe there are still so many people. They still have one question. Do these proposals, they are slogans? They are slogans of China foreign policies? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. I do really think these important ideas, they reflect the worldview of Chinese government. The community with a shared future for humankind. I think for China, this is a long-term goal, and it aims to adjust, recodify the bad effects of the Westphalian nation-state system. Everyone knows the Westphalian nation system. It was constructed by the Western power and by this treaty, Westphalian Treaty. Anyway, it means the modern nation-state system. I think in this system, the fundamental logic is to compete. Even after compete for the US now, US and it want to after compete with China. So this is the fundamental logic of the modern nation-state system. But the Chinese worldview, I think, is to coexist, co-develop, and we don't want to win by defeating others. Of course, not so easy. How to achieve that goal? I think China's logic is very clear. 3 initiatives. Security, GSI, is the foundation. My personal idea. And GDI, development, is the key. GCI, civilization, is a new perspective to go beyond the nation-state system. So I think this is the second thing I want to address. The last thing is about China's strategic culture. Actually, yesterday, when I met a Filipino friend, I told him, if you like China, you should study China. If you don't like China, I think you should study China even more, especially in the security field. I think miscalculation, misunderstanding is more terrible than the conflicts of interests, more terrible. For example, some Filipinos may think because there is a territorial dispute with China, the Philippines should ally more closely with the US. I don't know how many Filipinos have this idea, but anyway, actually, in the reality, according to this logic, the Philippines offer the full more locations for the American military. But everyone knows now the US is trying to make use of every tool, every approach, even every country to contain China. So it is possible for China to tolerate this worsening security situation, especially this new, I think maybe these new locations, they are so close to China's Taiwan. So I think tolerance is not the China's attitude. So personally, I think this is a very important background to understand the China's logic in the current Ren'ai Reef or Second Thomas show. I think this is a very important background to understand this incident. Maybe some Filipinos, they may believe they can make use of the China-US competition. But I think, I worry that it may be the Philippines finally may be kidnapped by the power competition. So I think this is the worst scenario. Because, I mean, to involve the power competition, this is the worst scenario. Because when, I think maybe there is a saying from the Africa, and it says that when the elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. So I think this is the most serious scenario. So to understand your labor is so important in my mind. But I think some countries, they could do better. Actually, they did some great work. In my mind, there is an example. Singapore. Singapore, everyone knows, this is a very small but very successful country, not only in economy, but also in foreign affairs. Actually, I think it has a bigger influence. Why? I think there are two reasons. One is that Singapore's leaders, they understand China very well. Singapore leaders, they understand the US very well. Actually, you may know that Singapore's leaders are often explaining the logic of China's thinking to the United States. So I think maybe every American president, they, they are paying so much attention, high attention to the visit of the Singapore's leaders, because these leaders, Singapore leaders, could tell them then real thing about China. And at the same time, when the Singapore leaders, they are explain something to American leader, actually they are taking some measures to ease the tension between two major powers. I think this is one reason. Another reason, I think, is that the Singaporean government has been carried out a real independent and balanced foreign policies. And he doesn't want to take a side in power competition. Actually, not only Singapore, actually, I think now most ASEAN countries, I think, when they face the power competition between China and the US, I think most of them, their position is not to take a side. I think this is the wisdom of Singapore. This is the wisdom of the ASEAN countries. I think we could learn something from Singapore and hope our two countries could have a better understanding each other. I stop here. Thank you so much.
Hello. Thank you so much, Professor Li Kai-shing, for that very informative and again, very educational keynote speech. Without further ado, let's proceed. The next part of our program is our panelist, Dr. Romel Banlawe, will give his reaction to our keynote speeches. Dr. Romel Banlawe is the chairman of the Board of Advisors of the China Study Center of the New Era University. Romel?
Thank you very much, Anna. Good afternoon to everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Let me thank first the Chinese Embassy through His Excellency Wang Zilian, the Association for Philippines-China Understanding through the Honorable Chairman Raul Lambino and President Sixto Benedicto, and also the New Era University headed by our own President, Dr. Alberto Domingo, and the Dean of School of International Relations, Dr. Carlos Tabunda, and also acknowledging the presence of my friend, a special envoy to China, Benedicto Chico. I would like to thank the organizer for inviting two prominent Chinese scholars to candidly engage with us in this troubled moment in Philippines-China relations. This troubled moment is caused by persistent territorial disputes and maritime jurisdictional conflicts in the West Philippine Sea in particular, and the whole of South China Sea in general. And I would like to emphasize that when we talk about the South China Sea disputes or West Philippine Sea disputes, there are two natures of disputes: territorial disputes and maritime jurisdictional conflict. I describe the current situation in Philippines-China relations as a troubled moment because, like any other moments in our lives, this challenging situation is just a moment that will soon pass for us to enjoy better days. Philippines-China relations always experience troubled moments in our peaceful history, and we always overcome difficult times in order to celebrate the golden age. Professor Liu and Professor Li articulated Chinese perspectives for us to enjoy a more secure world through the Global Security Initiative, a more prosperous world through the Global Development Initiative, and a more harmonious world through the Global Civilizational Initiative. I am grateful to my two friends from China for sharing with us China's efforts to build a more stable world. I think it is only appropriate for you, my two friends, to articulate China's view because we cannot do it for you. It is your responsibility to your country and to the Chinese people to convey the Chinese message and to assert the Chinese side. Our responsibilities as Filipinos is to convey the Philippine perspective and not the Chinese outlook. Otherwise, we will wrongfully accuse of being traitors. My heart currently bleeds to see Filipinos quarreling because of our different approaches on how to deal with China and the US, especially in the context of the West Philippine Sea issue. We are now being divided as a nation as either pro-China or pro-US, which for me is very simplistic, if not ignorant way to grapple with the complex situation in the South China Sea and more so in the West Philippine Sea. Framing the South China Sea disputes in the context of US-China major power rivalry is anathema to the peaceful management of territorial disputes and even management of maritime jurisdictional conflicts, which for me can only be effectively done through direct consultations and negotiated political solutions unless you declare war against each other. Of course, war is not an option. We want a peaceful, diplomatic option. Engaging China or the US does not make one a pro-China or pro-US. In fact, it is more pro-Filipino to engage both powers in order to get the best of both worlds rather than to be torn between two lovers. It is necessary to advance Philippine national interests. It is more pro-Filipino for the Philippines to facilitate the improvement of US-China relations because international peace and security rest largely on the nature of bilateral ties between these two great powers in competition. Leading China's three global initiatives are in fact complementary and supportive of the new agenda for peace being championed by the United Nations through the leadership of Secretary General Antonio Guterres. It is very sad to note, however, that China's three global initiatives to have a more secure, prosperous, and harmonious world is deemed problematic in the context of the United Strategy for a Free and Open Indo-Pacific. In China's Global Security Initiative, China is asserting efforts to avoid and prevent war. However, in the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy, the United States is preparing for war, using the Philippine territory as an access for this war. China's three global initiatives aim to build an open and inclusive world to all nations, regardless of current economic status, ethnic origin, ideological position, and political preference. But U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy wants to assert a free and open Indo-Pacific for the free world. But who are the free world and who constitutes the free world? Apparently, we now face two different models of global order presented by China and the U.S. The Philippines is at the crossroad of these two competing models. The choice that the Philippines will take can push China and the U.S. to the brink of war, or can bring both powers to the door of peace. For me, I choose peace. I strongly abhor war. I reject war as a matter of principle. Increased military activities cannot settle territorial disputes in the West Philippine Sea. I am against militarization of the South China Sea. In fact, I call for the demilitarization of the West Philippine Sea and the whole South China Sea in order to pursue functional cooperation of pragmatic nature as mandated by the 1984 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Based on existing international practices, there are many peaceful ways to settle territorial disputes, and there are many cases of successful settlement of territorial disputes. We just need to revisit these peaceful ways to address the South China Sea disputes and the West Philippine Sea disputes. Now the question is, can the Philippines peacefully settle territorial disputes with China in the West Philippine Sea? Let me answer this question by citing the excellent work of my good friend, M. Taylor Fravel, an American political scientist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. In his study based on his doctoral dissertation, Fravel underscores that China has been involved in at least 23 difficult territorial disputes since 1949. At present, only 6 of these territorial disputes persist, namely Taiwan, of course, the border disputes with India, the border dispute with Bhutan, and the 3 island group disputes, namely the Paracels, the Spratlys, and the Scarborough Shoal. Fravel discovered that China over the past 60 years was more likely to compromise in these conflicts with neighbors and less likely to use force than many Western scholars have feared. According to Fravel, China's territorial disputes with other neighbors have been effectively resolved. These include territorial disputes with North Korea, Russia, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, Myanmar, and Laos, as well as land border conflicts with Vietnam and the White Dragon Tail Island in the Gulf of Tonkin. China has settled the dispute over Hong Kong with Great Britain and Macau with Portugal, not through the use of coercion, aggression, or military force, but by patiently negotiating the return of these Chinese territories. China waited 156 years to get back Hong Kong from Great Britain, and for 442 years to regain Macau from Portugal. China has a bag full of patience to peacefully settle territorial disputes. Don't be impatient. We are impatient about the slow pace of the negotiation of the Code of Conduct in the South China Sea. We conducted the bilateral consultative mechanism on the South China Sea in 2017, and we are impatient about the result. China waited more than we suffered just to regain their lost territories. Prabel observed that China's resolution of the other disputes involved difficult compromise agreements in which China received only a minuscule part of the contested territory. In major cases, according to Prabel, in his scientific study of China's involvement in territorial disputes, China offered generous compromises in excess of 50% of the disputed land in favor of his neighbors. Those are scientific findings from an American and not from a Chinese scholar. By citing an American source that is well respected and accepted by the international community of experts and scientists, it is therefore very unfair to be labeled as pro-China. So call me pro-China, but I am citing an American source. In the Philippines, it is now very popular to be anti-China. Many politicians are now riding on this popularity of anti-China sentiments. But as Albert Einstein said, what is popular is not always right. I studied in Europe, in Leiden University, and in the United States, especially in Hawaii, Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies. I am trained in Europe and the United States. I am trained in the Western world. And nobody bothered to question me. Nobody raised issue against me for studying in Europe and in the United States. But my Western friends said that I changed a lot when I studied in China. Indeed, a lot changed me because of my various travels in China, witnessing how China has also changed a lot since I first visited the country in 2000. China has changed a lot. I also wish the Philippines to change a lot from its current state of underdevelopment, if not neo-colonialism. Personally, I'm not pro-China nor anti-US. I am a pro-Filipino who believes that friendship and peaceful coexistence with the US and China are essential for the advancement of Philippine national interest. Thank you very much. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Thank you so much, Professor Banlawe, for that very enlightening, very inspiring panel reactor. Ladies and gentlemen, while you're eating, I'm actually asking everyone to in our catering service to serve the food. We will move to the next part of our program, which is the open forum. So we will be requesting our panel of speakers to please go on stage. And so that we'll have we will be asking them questions and they can reply. Yes, please. Four. O kung sino yung available. Oh, yes. But yes, sir. Wait muna. Kakain pa kasi. While we're trying to put this, the chairs on stage, our guests and panel of speakers can possibly eat first. Apat lang. Anyone from the audience can ask question. I actually have 3 questions already from the media who are watching via Zoom or participating via Zoom. Apat lang. Just 4. Just 4. But anyone from the media, friends, and our guests and participants can ask questions. Sige lang, okay lang. Kasi ikaw yung last eh. Okay, take time. Yeah, it's okay. He will catch up. He was the last speaker. That's why. Okay. Okay. Professor Banlawi will join the panel in a matter of time. Oh, sorry, Professor Banlawi. It's okay, Professor. You can join in a few minutes. Okay, let me ask the first question. Actually, it's not my question, but a questions coming from Mr. Wilson Flores, a columnist of Philippine Star and a moderator of Pandesal Forum. The question is, what are the suggestions of two distinguished Chinese intellectuals, and Dr. Romel Banlawe, and I think Attorney Raul Lambino, for the Philippines and China to cool down the recent emotional tensions in the Ayungin Shoal, or the Second Thomas Shoal being named internationally, area for the sake of regional stability? That's the first question. I will ask the second question after the first question has been answered. Yes. Any one of our panel of speaker can respond to the question. Again, let me read again the question. No? This is from Wilson Flores, a columnist from Philippine Star. What are the suggestions of the two distinguished Chinese intellectuals, Dr. Banlawe and also Attorney Raul Lambino, for the Philippines and China to cool down? This is with regard to the emotional tension in the Ayungin Shoal, or the Second Thomas Shoal area, for the sake of regional stability. So anyone of our panel of speakers can respond.
Well, there
to the
are
question.
in place mechanisms already. The Chinese government and the Philippine government have already stated in the joint statement resulting from the January 2023 visit of President Marcos, and in his bilateral meeting with President Xi Jinping, that there will be continuing dialogue and consultation on the ministry level. And in fact, this has already transpired in the Philippines when the former Minister of Foreign Affairs visited the Philippines sometime, I think it was April, if I'm not mistaken. They have met already with our Foreign Secretary, and they have already begun the a mechanism of consultation in the ministry level, both of the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I'm also aware of a meeting that took place in Indonesia among the ASEAN ministers, and Minister Wang Yi, in regard to how they can engage situation in the ASEAN. So, as I said in my speech a while ago, there's no other alternative to this problem. This particular incident that took place in the Philippines a few weeks ago is not really something isolated, that it has only occurred this time. There have been incidents in the past, several years or in previous decades, but we were able to come up with a peaceful settlement of this particular problem through dialogue between our governments. So I think our leaders in the Philippines are doing their jobs. The Department of Foreign Affairs, the Department of National Defense, and the Office of the President, they are engaging their Chinese counterpart in regard to this particular issue in the Ayungin Shoal or in other parts of the West Philippine Sea.
Thank you, Attorney Lambino. Anyone? Yes. Yes, yes, Professor Liu Ching.
Okay. When we talk about the maritime disputes, we need two directions, two aspects. First, look at the history. Second, look at the world. If you look at the future, the history, we didn't have such kind of disputes, right? We have friendly exchange. We didn't have such things. Then we need to think about why there's such kind of issues. There's such kind of issues that happen. Why? And the next why is so, let's say, recently, the media, especially Western media, like to, to stir the water. Let's think about it. Then let's look at the world. How many coastal countries in the world? 150. How many countries have maritime disputes in the world? 90%. Look at the West Pacific. Almost 99% of the countries have maritime disputes. Look at the Berlin Strait, Berlin Sea, that the disputes happen between the United States and Russia. Look at the Japanese Sea. There are maritime disputes among the four: Russia, North Korea, South Korea, Japan. Then look at the East Sea, of course. There are disputes between China and Korea, South Korea, and also between China and Japan. Then the South China Sea, the sixth part. Then look at the east part of the Pacific. The United States is the hegemony. It is so powerful to do anything, to conquer any land in the world. Afghanistan, Middle East, North Africa, send army everywhere. But the United States couldn't solve the maritime disputes with related countries. How many countries have such kind of disputes with the United States? Well, the United States, how many countries the United States have maritime disputes with? How many? 7. In Caribbean Sea, the United States have maritime disputes with other 5 countries. Then look at the maritime disputes between the United States and Canada. How many disputes they have? They have 4. They have 4. The West, the East Pacific, and also the West Atlantic, and also the Antarctic. They also have disputes with Canada. Even the United States have maritime disputes with on weak islands with the Marshall Island countries. So the hegemony is so powerful, but it couldn't solve the sensitive disputes. What I mean is maritime disputes. It's normal. Luckily to say, we, China and ASEAN countries, sit down together. We negotiate commonly, share hand to negotiate a COC. And let us look at the Caribbean Sea. They have COC negotiation? No. So luckily for us, we come together, we negotiate together. For China and the Philippines, I think we could solve the sensitive issues through bilateral negotiation. We have bilateral mechanisms. We have no historical grudge. Or say we have friendly exchanges for 1,000 years. So from the history, of course, we are so confident. We are in full confidence to solve these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Liu Ching. And yes, Professor Li Kai-sheng.
I just want to add a very brief comments on this question. Actually, just add 2 words. The first word is talk. I think for territorial disputes, talk is always important. Maybe some Philippine friends, they still have some doubts on talk. But I think from a long-term perspective, the talk is so important. Be frankly, it is so hard to resolve the territorial disputes in the short term. Actually impossible. So I think talk is always very important, especially if we want to understand the real goal of the another side. If we want to find a solution of this dispute, of course, if you don't want to, that's another problem. But if you want to find a solution, talk is always important. Generally, I think when talk goes on, it means war goes away. I think this is the value of talk. So this is the first word. The second word is focus. Focus on what? Focus on economic development. The Philippines is a developing country. China is a developing country too. So I think this is a big difference between our 2 countries with the US. US is a developed country. Of course, economy is still very important for the US, but his main goal is to maintain its position. But for our 2 countries, the Philippines, China, we still need more development. So development are so important for us, especially I think for our 2 countries, we have so many fields to cooperate, agriculture, energy, and so on. I think we are so many to cooperate. So I think let us to think about the real benefits for our 2 countries, real benefits. And generally, last word is that please put aside the disputes and work together for our future cooperation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Li Kai-sheng. We'll proceed to the next question. Okay. So the next question still it's from Mr. Wilson Lee Flores, is a little bit more difficult, I think, for our panel of speakers. But yeah, it's important. How can the Philippines avoid getting involved in any military clash in the face of the increasing military presence of USA with its NATO and its AUKUS allies here in Southeast Asia? I think this question should be answered by Attorney Lambino or Professor Banlawi, because the question is with reference to the Philippines. Again, the question is, how can the Philippines avoid getting involved in any military clash in the face of an increasing military presence, well, the USA with its NATO and AUKUS allies. AUKUS is Australia, yeah. here in Southeast Asia. Attorney Raul Lambino, APCO Chairman.
The Philippines and the United States, as we all know, has an existing mutual defense treaty with the United States. And this was established, if I'm not mistaken, sometime in 1951. And still, it is a binding treaty between the two countries. The terms and conditions in the treaty are very specific. So we just hope that the conflict that will involve the United States would not be included among the parameters set forth in the Mutual Defense Treaty between the Philippines and the United States. Or later on, there was also this visiting forces agreement that was, I think, entered into by the Philippines and the United States sometime 20 years ago. And now very recently with the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. Now, as I keep on saying, these are treaty obligations of the Philippines. And we all know in international, and I'm a lawyer, that we have our obligation with our partner in any treaty, whether security or otherwise. Now, what kind of conflict that would trigger the Philippines being involved in a conflict that the United States or any of its new security alliance is concerned would be if and when the conflict would touch on any of the provision of the Mutual Defense Treaty, then the Philippines will be involved. And that is very dangerous given the situation now. The conditions when the Mutual Defense Treaty was entered into sometime in the 1950s, or that of the Visiting Forces Agreement 20 years ago, the conditions then were completely different from the conditions right now. Are we saying that China and the United States are enemies and at the war will go into war? I don't think so. Both countries have their diplomatic relations, and both their leaders have been talking on how to stabilize the relationship between the United States and China. In the same breath, are we now saying that we are not at peace with China? Of course not. I said in my speech that the dispute that we have over some territories in the South China Sea or in West Philippine Sea, or the incidents that took place recently and in the past, would not define the total universe of relationship between the Philippines and China. There are already talks going on between China and the Philippines and of the ASEAN countries on the code of conduct that will be observed by China and all the parties concerned in the South China Sea. I beg our countrymen that let us be more patient, be more resilient. Let us wait and keep trusting our leaders that they are going to do what is right for our countries and our peoples, both of the Philippines and China. And for the Filipinos, we have a president that has overwhelmingly gotten the support of the Filipino people. We have entrusted to him the fate of this country for the next 5 years more. And let us have to give him that benefit, not just the benefit of the doubt, but the benefit of trusting him to do what is right for the Philippines and the Filipino people.
Thank you, APCO Chairman Attorney Lambino. Dr. Romel, would you want to respond?
First, we can only avoid military clash if we will demilitarize the problem. By encouraging American military presence in Philippine territories, surely we will be the magnet of attack by other parties because we are allowing adversaries to have military access to our territories. And I have studied China's military development. We will be a magnet of attack. And that is the reason why we kicked out the bases in 1991 because of the same reason. We don't want to be the magnet of attack by adversaries of the United States. And do you know the reason why we were a magnet of attack by international terrorist groups? Because of the United States. You see? So I think we have to demilitarize the problem and rethink giving access to major powers to our territories. There are many non-military ways to approach our problem in the West Philippine Sea. And these non-military ways encourage functional cooperation in various areas like marine environmental protection, marine scientific research, search and rescue operation, combating transnational crimes, joint fishery management, and even joint development of natural gas and oil. In 2017, we initiated the bilateral consultative mechanism in the South China Sea. We made a big breakthrough in 2019 when we set up working groups for joint fishery management and working groups for political security cooperations, as well as working groups for the joint development of natural gas. These working groups could be our stepping stones towards further collaboration in areas. However, we were affected by the pandemic and we failed to implement the working group. Now, let's take stock of the achievements of the bilateral consultative mechanism. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. Then let's start talking again. We cannot solve the problem in the South China Sea by loud and heightening popular nationalism of both parties. You know the danger of popular nationalism? If you talk about territories and you heighten popular nationalism, nations go to war. So we need to tame popular nationalism because it's nationalism that encourages nations to go to war. That is why John Lennon said, imagine there's no country. Because people will really go to war because of territories fueled by popular nationalism. Popular nationalism will harden the position of parties. If there is a hardening of positions, there is no room for negotiations. So we have to be open, okay? Open to make compromises. And as I indicated in my remarks earlier, China compromised more than 50% of its territories just to settle territorial disputes with neighbors. So let's be open also to make some sort of compromises, especially in the area of maritime jurisdictional conflict. We have successful case of negotiating bilaterally maritime jurisdictional conflict with Indonesia. And it took us almost 25 years to come out with a delimitation agreement with Indonesia on our maritime territories. So give Philippines and China more time to talk about how to manage their differences in the West Philippine Sea. And I have a proposal as a scholar. I have written some proposal to come out with a pragmatic solution to the West Philippine Sea dispute in order to prevent war to occur in the West Philippine Sea. And one of my proposals is first, to implement all existing proposals laid down by the Declaration on the Code of Conduct in the South China Sea in the Scarborough Shoal. Why? Because the Scarborough Shoal is only contested between China and the Philippines. Vietnam is not contesting it. Other parties are not contesting it. So we can do bilateral cooperation in Scarborough Shoal. How? Joint fishery management, marine environmental protection, marine scientific research. Scholars, we have solutions. And I don't know why politicians don't read them. That's why we want to engage our politicians too. Now, in my own personal capacity, I am engaging senators, congressmen to own our proposal for a non-military approach to the South China Sea disputes. Unless you really want to go to war. If you really want to go to war, then heighten your popular nationalism. But for me, okay, I don't want to go to war. I want peace. I just came from Russia, another problematic country, for the Western world. I saw their victory museum. You know, the victory museum is to celebrate Russian victory of their wars against the Germans. But I have seen, you know, the disastrous effect and the agony of wars. I don't want to suffer that. I want to continue enjoying peace for the rest of my life and for the life of my children and grandchildren and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Banlawen, Attorney Lambino. The next question, I think, the way I see it, it should be answered by our Chinese scholars or academics, a guest. The question is about global security initiative. How do you think the global security initiative principles, because there are principles in the global security initiative, be useful and helpful in resolving and mitigating the South China Sea dispute? So that's the question coming from one of our actually academics as well, Filipino academic. Yeah.
Okay, I think global security initiative is a principle. Actually, so many principles in these initiatives. So I think, especially for South China Sea, in my mind, at least 2 points from this initiative are very, very important. The first one is about common security. Common security. It means the security is indivisible. It means one country should not search for its own security at the cost of another security. I think this is actually, but in the South China Sea, this is a big problem. This is a, maybe, this is a, how do you say, a fundamental cause of the current situation. You know, because now the US is constructing, how do you say, mini-lateral security framework against China. For example, in Northeast Asia, Japan, South Korea, and the US, this is a new trilateral security framework to against China. And I know in the East Asia, in ASEAN region, I think I know the US is organizing other, for example, trilateral framework, for example, including Japan, Philippines, and the US. So I think that this is a real problem. It means that these military alliances, maybe it is to some extent, it may be a little, how do you say, maybe a little useful for the US, for the Philippines, but for the long term, it will increase the tension, regional tension. So I think especially it will cause the insecurity for China. So I think common security, it means both of us, at least for the Philippines, for our China, we should enjoy the common security. But if what are you doing will be make my security in danger, I think for China, it has to do some response. Maybe not against the Philippines, but you know, the main master of this incident is the US. But if the China is want to do something against the US, because the US now is doing something in South China Sea, so maybe China has to do something in South China Sea. But so I think this is very complicated. But anyway, if our 2 countries could maintain the common security, this idea, and we can think about the another country's security concern, I think this is a very important direction. So I think this is a very important idea, very important principle in GSI. Another, I think, principle in GSI is negotiation. By negotiation to solve the terror disputes. And I know that so many Filipinos, maybe they're still thinking China should accept the 2016 ruling. But this is very unfair to China, because this ruling, I think, the this tribunal, I think China actually, from the first beginning, China didn't agree. China has been not a part of this arbitration. So I think this is not the Chinese obligation to accept this ruling. Actually, in China's strategic culture, just now in my speech, actually I address the importance of China's strategic culture. I think a very, very important thing in China's strategic culture is bilateral negotiation for every difference, Because I think negotiations and it is more flexible. It is more actually be realistic. Because I think geopolitics, they are so complicated. Actually, it could not be resolved by simple rules, something. It should be dealt with very prudently, maybe very realistically. So I think all of these things could be achieved by negotiation, even by, not so public diplomacy, not resort to public opinion, not to resort to strong nationalism. So I think this is what the GSI told us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Professor Liu Ching. By the way, before Professor Liu Ching would respond, I have two more questions here from the Zoom. And I will finish this and then we'll move to the next part of our program. Because these people also are very eager for their question to be answered. So we'll a little extend for 5 minutes because it's 6 o'clock. Yes, Professor Liu Ching, you can respond to the question posted earlier.
Yeah. When we talk about the South China Sea, I think the South China Sea is our home. China ASEAN countries should maintain peace and stability jointly. I have no choice. China's GSI emphasizes common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable stability of security. What is it common? Just now, Professor Li Keqiang has analyzed a lot. I just added some. The common means we are regional country. We share the common security. Not only China needs security, but also Philippines also need, and other countries, other ASEAN countries need security. This is regional security. This is our common security. So the security, this regional security couldn't be divided into different groups. Of course, we respect the Philippines has its own choice. Airlines security, yes, this is your choice. But you should also care about the common security, regional security. If one country use airline security to sacrifice the regional security, I think the regional countries have a different answer, have a different analysis. The common security for all of us. If one block security divide the region into different security pieces, it apparently makes the region unstable. Because different airlines members have different security requirement, needs. Some have geopolitical competition. They have such kind of requirement, but some countries don't. So there will something happen that some countries' security will be used by the other. Theoretical, in theory. So that's why we emphasize a common interest. The second, I think, is comprehensive security. We talk about a lot, traditional security, right? But how about non-traditional security? I think some people still go hungry. Some people still need food, electricity, or energy. Some places, I think. Some countries are still short of, food and also, energy. The comprehensive security vision emphasizes we needed to deal with non-traditional security. Of course, including, the climate change issues. If the level of the sea level go higher and higher, then some cities, some reefs, some islands, we couldn't see it again anymore. So we should share hands to work together to deal with such kind of non-traditional issues. The third, I think, is cooperative security. In our region, I think we need a multilateral security mechanisms. That is why China and ASEAN countries come together to talk about the negotiated COC, because this is our rule. This is our regional rule. We talk together each other. We can come, we make it out. We jointly make the rules for all of us. The last, I think, it is sustainable security. Any security could continue for the future. The security mechanism could maintain stability, peace for the region. So I think sustainable security needs all of us to come together to make security mechanisms. I think ASEAN Forum, ASEAN Plus 3, the forum, we can come together to maintain the regional security. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Liu Xing. Yes, we have one last question, by the way. And this question is actually addressed to Professor Lee. But before that, let me read the comment from the Zoom, from Napoleon Ko. According to him, China West Pacific Sea, I am surprised why China failed to contest decision to award huge area of China West Pacific Sea to Philippines. What way back 1950, 1951 in my grade school, Chinese school. This is more of a comment. According to him, Philippine territories include seas, islets, or translated as West Philippine Sea, and Nansha South Islets. But China should be willing to negotiate with Philippines. But this is more about comment of talk and negotiation between China and the Philippines over disputed South China Sea. So I think this is more of a comment. But the last question is for Professor Lee. From Mr. Attorney Severino Benedicto, the brother of APCO President Sixto Benedicto. The question is, the Philippines is the least likely Chinese enemy. Least likely Chinese enemy. Because in all ASEAN nations, the Philippines has integrated the Chinese community into the general Filipino community. What steps should China take to understand Filipino culture, sentiments, and mentality? That's addressed to you, Professor Lee.
Okay, thank you for this question. Big challenge, yeah, because I mentioned that just now, we are different countries. Actually, be frankly, we need to do more to understand the Philippines more and better. Actually, of course, in China, as far as I know, there are some universities. Actually, I know some scholars to study the Philippines, its culture, its people, its economy. So I think in China, actually, maybe at least I think about 20, professionals to study in the Philippines. Compared with other, for example, they expert on Vietnam, in China. Actually, maybe the expert on the Philippines is still okay. Not so less, actually, not so less. But the problem is that we need to create more exchange channels, just like this forum, because these exchanges, be frankly, not so often. So I think this is very important. I remember, actually, when I fly from Shanghai to Manila, just 3 hours, so very short trip. So I think we should, I think we can increase more exchange channels to encourage more dialogues to understand each other. Especially, we should have a more we need to expand the space. I think the space for the scholars, actually the scholars from our two countries, because I can feel that in China there are some Chinese scholars, maybe they don't want to go to the Philippines because they don't think they could have effective exchanges with his or her counterparts in China, because in the Philippines there is a very, very strong atmosphere of pro-US. So I think this is very, very defeated some Chinese the Philippines experts. So I think we could do more. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the open forum. Let's give a round of applause to our panel of speakers. Sir, we will proceed to the next part of our program, which is the closing remarks. So thank you so much for graciously answering, and patiently answering all the questions that were posted to our panel
Anna,
of speakers.
Yes. Before we go to
yes.
Noy,
Okay,
let me
sir.
just end this note that there has to be confidence building measures from both the Philippines and China in order for us to start trusting each other again, and then we can keep on discussing and talking how we can resolve our disputes over the West Philippine Sea. What kind of confidence building measures? Probably we can ask China to open some of its markets for Filipino overseas workers. There are now more Chinese workers in the Philippines than Filipinos working in China. Okay. So I think we understand that there are certain limitations or laws in China that don't allow foreigners to work in China. Perhaps China can consider the Philippines as a special case, a friendly neighbor, because there are many capable Filipino workers who can do some jobs in China if China is going to open that up. Part of the global development initiative of China is to allow Filipino workers to work in China. It's up to the Chinese government what kind of jobs will be open for Filipinos. I think you can have the choice of the best Filipino workers helping the Chinese economy grow further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, APCO Chairman Attorney Lambino. Yes, again, ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a round of applause. The next part of our program is a closing remarks to be delivered by APCO President, Mr. Sixto Benedicto. Sir.
Afternoon. Oh, good evening. Okay, first, I'd like to thank Dr. Alberto Domingo, President of New Era University, for the venue. His Excellency Ambassador Wang Xilian, thank you. Of course, the keynote speakers are Chairman Attorney Raul Lambino, APCO Chairman, and Professor Liu Qing, Vice President and Senior Research Fellow of the Chinese Institute of International Studies, and Professor Li Kaixing, Vice President of Shanghai Institute for International Studies. Our panelists, Dr. Romel Banglawi, of course, our moderator, Professor Ana Malindo Gui. Friends and colleagues, media friends, our fellow trustees of officers and members of the Association of Philippines-China Understanding, officers and trustees, please stand up. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First, on behalf of the Association for Philippine-China Understanding, let me express my gratitude to all who have joined and participated in this 9th Manila Forum with the team GDI, GSI, and GCI. China's contribution to stabilizing an unstable world. In hope you've gained insight and learned much from our prominent keynote speakers and panelists. Special and sincere thanks to all our keynote speakers, panelists for sharing their perspectives and insights on the foreign policy of China, very much embodied by the concepts and ideas of the Global Security Initiative, Global Development Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative, as proposed by Chinese President Xi Jinping. Indeed, your presence and dynamic participation have made this forum a fruitful endeavor. Again, thank you. I believe that the principles presented by the GSI, GDI, and GCI are essential if the world is to sustain peace and security and achieve common and shared development sustainability. For instance, the Global Security Initiative proposed by President Xi as a security framework and approach toward conflict resolution and peace promotion is the most pragmatic approach to maintaining peace and security in the region and across the globe, precisely because it prescribes a sense of pragmatism needed and the necessary principles through which peace, security, and development could be achieved and secured in the wider Asian region and beyond. The Global Security Initiative is an alternative security framework and approach towards conflict resolution and peace promotion across the globe that, to a greater extent, challenges the Western-led global security governance framework for conflict resolution and peace promotion, which is most often than not has been operationalized on the pretext of unilateralism, The GSI should be interpreted and understood as China's commitment to uphold multilateralism and its peaceful rise as a global economic powerhouse and a great power both politically, economically, and militarily. I also see the GSI as a Chinese way of promoting Asian cooperation and unity as one family, cooperatively addressing intertwined and interconnected traditional and non-traditional security issues and concerns that Asia as a region is facing. Likewise, the GSI should be understood as China's firm pursuit and commitment to upholding the basic norms governing international relations and safeguarding global fairness, justice, and peace against all forms of hegemonism, unilateralism, and power politics, and opposes the Cold War mentality, interference in other countries' internal affairs, and double standards. In many ways, the Global Security Initiative should be seen as China's commitment to build a peaceful and harmonious world alongside China's pledge to build humanity with a shared future. Indeed, in an ever volatile and challenging world order, the GSI, GDI, and GCI serve as the guiding rod and guardrails against instability and conflict and lead towards peace, stability, and development in Asia and beyond. Furthermore, China's commitment to building humanity with a shared future is best exemplified by China's continuous economic development that benefits the wider international community. Hence, the more China develops and matures as an economy, the more that other countries will benefit from it through trade as an export destination for other countries' export product, given that it is not only a huge market, but it has a substantial middle-class population with a relatively high purchasing capacity compared to other countries in the world. From the technology sharing and transfers from Chinese firms to other countries' business and tech firms. On this note, I am indeed impressed and fascinated by the clarity in terms of China's vision, mission, and policy directions embodied in the GSI, GDI, and GCI. Foreign policy-wise, despite the challenges it faces as a civilization state. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we sincerely thank our keynote speakers and panelists. Thank you also for all the participants in this 9th Manila Forum. We hope to see you all at the next Manila Forum. Once again, good evening to all. Sheshe, mabuhay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, APCO President, Mr. Sixto Benedicto, for that very warm closing remarks. Now we are at the end of our forum. But before I close the whole Manila Forum, the 9th Manila Forum, I would like to request everyone to please sing a happy birthday song to our 82-year-old Ka Amaro Samonte, one of the award for promoting Philippine-China understanding awardees. It's his birthday today. He's 82 years old. Hello. Hindi ako marunong. Happy
birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Photo? Yes, we will have a photo opportunity here at the back. Please change the backdrop into the very first slide. Yeah, and then let's remove the chair, please. Our dear security people, please remove the chair so that the background would be nice, not the chairs. Asan ang aking mga angels? Angels, come on, please remove the chairs. Dears, please remove the chairs. And then we'll have opportunity, photo opportunity. Thank you, pa. Yes. Please remove the chair so that the backdrop will be okay. And then careful sa at saka yung podium, remove mo na rin. Oo. Quick lang, sandali lang po. And we still have food at the back. Oh, dear, lang, dyan mo na lang ilagay. Oo. Pati ang podium, dear. Pakibaba. Oo. At saka yung isa pang chair. Oo. Ingat lang yung mga wirings. Okay. Photo off. Ano ka ba? Magpo-photo off kasi sa mga speakers. Sandali lang yung background, inaayos natin kasi kailangan magandang background. Okay. No, ako nagawa ng speech mo eh. Alam mo namang hindi kita... Ay, podium sa gilid pa. Okay, tama na. Okay. Okay na po. Photo op, please. Oo. Hindi. Mamaya sandali. Okay na.
Recording stopped.